guys, this is your fellow ranger Brianna Clay, and I am here interviewing my dad, Anthony Clay. He's been a police officer for over 15 years now, and he works at our newly established Menifee Police Department. So I'm gonna ask him a few questions for you guys. What inspired you to become a police officer?
Can't say anything in particular inspired me. It was just something that I was interested in doing as a young kid, and then as I got older it became more of an interest for me, and I went on some ride-alongs and I was hooked from there and decided that that's what I wanted to do.
What is your experience with dealing with drug and substance abuse?
Well, over my career I've experienced it here and there. Obviously you come across a lot of it in calls and seeing it when you contact people. I've been exposed to people that have been high on or under the influence of methamphetamines, cocaine, heroin, alcohol is probably the most common that you come across. So a lot of that just contacting people on the streets or calls for service. Family members sometimes will call and say that their family member appears to be under the influence. Sometimes it could be even young kids. And then we just assess them from there and decide what's the best course of action for them.
What makes addictive substances so harmful?
Well, I've actually seen a pretty young kid who's probably about 18. I remember distinctly watching him kind of deteriorate from the age of 18 until about 25 when he just kind of disappeared out of the area that I was working at the time. So watching him deteriorate slowly was pretty hard to watch because he was a good kid, but he got addicted to drugs, and then from there it was just a matter of trying to find a way to get that drug. So it just ate him away, and watching his family was pretty hard to see.
How has not affiliating yourself with drugs or other addictive substances helped you become what you are today?
Well, if I would affiliate myself with any of those things growing up, I wouldn't have been able to get through a background investigation. That includes any careers that require background. A lot of times they ask you questions about your affiliation with drugs or being around narcotics or even parties where things like that are present, and that can disqualify you almost immediately. So me not being involved in that stuff actually helped allow me to get into the profession.
For those who are struggling with these types of substances, how would you help them recover and get them out of it?
Well, for a person to recover from narcotics or addiction, they first off need to change. They have to want to change. So your family can want you to do it, but if that person doesn't want to do it, it's not going to work. So at some point in time, that person has to make the decision that they need to change their lifestyle, and then from there, they need to have a program or at least a supportive group of people that want to push them towards becoming sober.
What are some of the signs that someone is struggling with addiction?
Some of the signs that people often notice, police officers will notice little things that the person will do when they're under the influence. But for family members, probably noticing that person doesn't care about maybe their hygiene, maybe they don't care about going to work, maybe they don't want to wake up to go to work or go to school or do the things that they normally like to do. That's probably the first indicator that something's going on. And that's when family member would notice that right away.
When and how should parents talk to their children about drugs and addiction?
That's probably something that the parent has to figure out, but I think the earlier the better. As soon as that child is getting exposed to things or maybe going out to people's houses, that's probably the time to start mentioning to that kid that there's things out there like drugs and the effects of it. It doesn't have to be, obviously you're gonna direct it at that person's age, that child's age. You're gonna talk to a 6, 7, 8, 10-year-old a little differently than you would obviously a teenager. So you probably need to adjust how you're gonna direct it towards them, basically teaching them that stuff is wrong and it's bad, up until a teenager actually telling them what can it do to them.
What is your advice on avoiding peer pressure?
Well, obviously peer pressure is a big deal for teenagers and kids. I think the only advice you can really give a kid with peer pressure is that they need to try and look at the future and think about their goals in life and how addictions or succumbing to peer pressure can negatively affect that. So if you're you're trying to get into the military, you need to think, well, if I get into the military, am I going to get myself disqualified because of an addiction or because of drug use? Or colleges will disqualify you right away if you have some kind of history or some kind of trouble with drugs and addiction. So I think just the best thing for them to do is try to think about their goals in the future and how using drugs and narcotics can actually affect them.
Number 9, how can addiction spiral?
Well, you can get addicted to drugs and you can somewhat be normal and maybe nobody ever notices, but for the most part, people that get addicted to drugs end up hurting their bodies for the long term. So they can end up killing themselves, they can end up getting an overdose, they can get sick. Sometimes you won't get sick for a long time, you'll just live on the streets and you won't have any money, you won't have any place to go, you can't get a job because your only goal is to get drugs. So definitely you can spiral to hurting yourself or living on the streets.
What are alternatives to addictive substances?
Alternatives would be doing things that are fun and that are actually productive. Learning a new hobby, learning how to play an instrument, go bike riding, going to the gym, learning how to draw, there's all kinds of hobbies that you can get into that can kind of take your mind away from using drugs. That's probably the best answer I can give.
Well, thank you, Dad, for answering some questions for my fellow Rangers.
Hello, my name is Mr. Lowe. I'm the high school counselor for Santa Rosa Academy, and I'm going to answer some questions today about drugs and addictive substances. The first question is, what makes addictive substances so harmful? Well, you may or may not have heard about different side effects that drugs have, any drugs really, but addictive substances are very dangerous because the addictive properties, the chemicals inside these drugs that make someone feel good or feel something in general are the dangerous part, because they actually induce chemical reactions that make you feel that way. And because they do that, your body becomes dependent on those drugs. And that's what makes them so harmful, because your body then needs that to feel those same ways again. And because it needs it, the person who is addicted to that substance is drawn back to this dangerous drug that then brings those same side effects, those dangerous side effects. So when someone looks at something and says, well, I'm not going to get addicted, or I'm just going to try it once, that's what's so dangerous, because even trying it once, it causes that chemical reaction in your brain. And the whole reason why people use drugs is as a coping mechanism. So the main thing is that someone becomes dependent on those drugs, and that's what's dangerous about the addictive substance. The second question was, how has not affiliating myself with drugs or addictive substances helped me to become who I am today? I'm a school counselor. I've worked through different schools to obtain degrees and worked through different schools to get where I am today, and I'm very happy. But more than anything, even if I wasn't a school counselor, I enjoy the freedom that I have to not be tied down to a drug. And what I mean by that, talking about the addictive substance, yes, I'm a school counselor. Not everyone wants to be that. But when you are passionate about something, you want to be able to pursue it without something holding you down or something actually controlling your actions. What I mean by that is, I haven't been associated with drugs, but even someone who smokes cigarettes or vapes, they find themselves in the same kind of cyclical situation where they have this drive. Their body needs that to feel whatever they're going for that drug as the coping mechanism. And even if they're able to go about their job in their normal way, they're still tied down because they have to take a smoking break. Not being affiliated with that has allowed me to kind of focus on other things. I have the freedom to spend my entire day doing what I need to and what I want to, and ultimately I get a better enjoyment out of life. Staying away from drugs will allow you the freedom to do what you want, not control you and make you do things that maybe you're not passionate about. The third question was, for those who are struggling with drugs, substance abuse, or addiction, how would I help them get through it? So what I would do to help them is help them replace that negative coping strategy with a positive one. So for example, someone who's addicted to nicotine, instead of lighting up a cigarette or vaping or something like that, maybe take a walk. Use that same amount of time, that 10 minutes or whatever it takes to smoke a cigarette, vape. Maybe just take a walk. See how it makes them feel. And the withdrawal is a whole other situation, but it can help with that as well. It takes time. That's one of the biggest things. It's just allowing time. You can't expect someone to throw something away completely. And if they were really addicted to a hard substance or a hard drug, really getting them the help that, they can go to a doctor or a therapy center and get the help that they need if they're that far down that addiction path. Number 4, what are the signs that someone is struggling with addiction? Well, as a friend of someone, you can usually tell because their habits change. So maybe you're used to going out and playing a game of soccer with them, or something, they're usually focused at this time, but they become jittery, or they become in some way different than their normal personality. You can see a change in it. That is usually a sign that something is going on. Sometimes the best thing is to really just ask a question, open-ended usually, and you don't want to put them in a corner, but if you were to try and help someone like I try and do each day, maybe it's just, hey, is there something that I can help with? You've asked for gas 3 times this week. Can I give you a ride somewhere? Or maybe changing things up. And you'll probably be met with defensiveness, but that's a further sign that, maybe there's something more serious going on. So just look for that, signs of irritability, money disappearing or being asked for, and then maybe just the physical side effects. What is my advice on avoiding peer pressure? I like to call it peer influence, and avoiding it is not easy. Peer pressure, the way that a lot of people are taught about it, is simply someone basically cornering you and telling you, well, all of the cool kids are smoking cigarettes or vaping or some other addictive substance, and if you don't do it, you won't be cool. And I mean, if I'm being honest, it didn't necessarily happen to me or a lot of the friends that I knew. People didn't come up and say, hey, do you want to try this new drug? Thankfully, and that might be because I wasn't in the situations where someone was presenting that. But a lot of times there isn't this forced idea. And that's why I like to say it's peer influence. Because what would probably happen is you'd be hanging out with a friend or friends, and they would be doing something in the corner, and you don't know what it is, and you're curious, and then you ask. So really, you're likely going to be the person that's going to investigate because of curiosity, and then they're going to tell you about it, and you'll have the choice to engage in that activity or not. I think the biggest way to avoid peer pressure or peer influence is simply watching out for those situations to arise. If you're at a party and some people are doing something that, is in the back room, or, just kind of stay away from that. Or if someone does come up and share with you something that they're doing and they're telling you it's the best thing in the world, ask questions about it. Find out, what is this? How much does it cost? What is it that you're doing? Why is it that this is like a secret thing? Make sure you do your research on things. And the way you can just avoid it all, say no, just like you hear with all of the different things. It doesn't have to be just, no, I'm not going to do drugs. But you can be that straightforward about it. Just, no, that's not for me. I'm having a great time. But I'll be right here, and if you're curious about something, ask questions and stay away from something without knowing all of the answers, because you might start getting addicted to something that you don't know how it's going to affect you in the long run. I hope these answers have helped you. If you need anything else, please let me know. But it's a pleasure to be your counselor, and I look forward to helping you throughout your future. All right, have a nice day.